Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here now. My name is Anne-Marie Pollocky-Dinkle, and I am the event manager for CMX. Welcome, welcome. As you can see, right now we have the agenda on screen, so we're going to quickly run through that with you, and then we'll get started here. So this is the welcome. Welcome, 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 welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for joining us here today. After this, we'll move directly into the Masterclass with Ashleigh Brookshaw. Then we'll have a live audience Q&A. We'll do a little bit of a wrap up, and then the event will be over. Before we get started, some virtual guidelines. So for all chat communication, please use the Sessions chat tab. Here's where you can comment on anything that Ashleigh shares, chat with fellow attendees, engage, and all of that. Ask questions specifically on Ashleigh's content. Please use the Q&A tab. That's one over to the left of the Sessions chat tab. Here you can upvote questions that you want asked in case you have doubled up on the questions. I will be using the upvote feature, so I'll make sure whatever gets kind of the most popular or as many votes, I will be sure to ask that. Close any distracting applications. Pro tip, Bevy Virtual works best with Chrome. And also as a note, this event will be recorded and will be shared with you all and uploaded to our CMX YouTube channel. Oops, there we go. So a little bit about today. We're so excited to bring everyone the first masterclass of 2021. This is a series that is going to really dive deep into community-related subjects, where we will have an expert come in, deliver a masterclass with actionable tips that really solve community professional pain points and provides all community professionals with the help and tools they need to succeed. Speaking to members of the CMX community, noticing a lot of themes, so really wanted to develop this series to just be super helpful deep dives. If you have any ideas, if you are an expert, if you want to join us, or if you just want to chat with me about some issues that you're currently having and you're looking for us to solve, please reach out. My email is annemarie@cmxhub.com, and I'm also available in the CMX Slack. So yeah. For example, this masterclass today is all about building an online community and a large-scale change management initiative. In this masterclass, you will learn elements of change management, review DEI principles, receive tips on managing member experience, and build lasting, equitable, and inclusive experiences for your members. Again, the goal of this particular series is for each attendee to walk away with a connection, so meeting community professionals. 2, getting one actionable item that you can implement today. Just went through that list with you, what Ashleigh's going to be sharing, super exciting. And 3, advocate and grow the community. CMX events are powered by Bevy, a software company in the business of building and scaling communities. The team is committed to growing and advocating the community industry, and we couldn't be more excited to support our partners. Everything that you've seen so far is on Bevy. So go to bevy.com to get more information and grab a demo. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. I would like to bring on stage Ashleigh, or virtual stage, Ashleigh Brookshaw. She is a detailed-oriented and digital change enthusiast with expertise in online community engagement, cultural and transformative change management through DEI, and strategic digital marketing communications to drive business results. She's the founder and CEO of C2M Digital, LLC, where she consults on organizational change management through DEI and online community building and strategy. All right. Without further ado, Ashleigh!
Hi, guys.
Hi. Everyone give a virtual
Yay. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to be here with you today. I just want to test something really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 minute. You guys are getting an in-depth look on Ashleigh's just bought a second screen. So this is my first masterclass with doing 2 screens. So I just want to make sure that you're able to see appropriately. Anne, can you confirm that you are not seeing the note slides, or are you seeing the note slides?
I do see the note
You
slide.
do see the note slides. Okay.
Yeah, we've got all that good stuff.
Okay, so what I'm going to do really quickly is just see if I can switch that around. I apologize, you guys. Like I said, this is my first time with 2 screens. So I want to see, oh, it's doing the same thing. And do you have any quick thoughts? Should I change my display before we get rocking and rolling?
Yeah, so right now we see your desktop. Yeah, no worries. We are gonna figure this out. Okay. I can, let me see what I can do here for you. I can help drive. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I believe I emailed the slides to you, or I could try to change my display really quick. Once again, thank you guys so much for your patience as we kind of figure this out. You know, as a digital change enthusiast, I thought I'd be awesome and get 2 screens so that I can really deep dive into the content. And of course, as technology sees, there's just a little bit of a hiccup. So I totally appreciate you guys hanging in there with me for just 1 second. I promise the content is worth it.
Yay! Okay, so I got this. Okay, we can do this. All right. Okay, so I'm going to do this and let's see.
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
All right, how are we looking here? What do you see?
Perfect. I just see my beautiful slide deck. So thank you so much for doing that.
Of course.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much, like I said, for hanging in there with me as we go ahead and get started. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Anne. Perfect. So thanks so much again. Hi, my name is Ashleigh Brookshaw. And before we begin, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about myself so that you can get to know me a little bit better. I'm currently the manager of community engagement, also at the American Society of Safety Professionals, where I manage 4 diversity, equity, and inclusion groups, as well as an online members-only community. As Anne said, I'm also the founder and the chief innovation officer of my own consultancy, C2M Digital, which is that digital culture change and strategic consulting business where we help our clients cultivate that digital connected culture to drive change and impact business results. Like most of you, I'm trying to stay productive during COVID-19, so I thought I'd share a little bit about the new dishes that I'm learning how to cook. I mean, if you have not clued into Pinterest at this point in the pandemic, you are missing out. I made some great lamb chops yesterday with a recipe that I found on Pinterest, and I'm also waiting on my Peloton bike so that I can kind of combat that quarantine 19. I don't know if anyone else is also waiting on their Peloton bike, but that is one community that I am really looking forward to getting into. And just a little bit on my education. I have a bachelor's in advertising public relations and a master's in multicultural and organizational communication with that concentration in training and development from DePaul University. And I also have a bachelor's degree in advertising public relations with minors in marketing and Spanish. Just to set the stage with you guys today, everything that I'm going to be sharing is a result of my own experiences and perspectives while creating that really online equitable user experience, which is tied to organizational culture. Next slide. And just to get us started today, as we talked about with COVID staying really productive, I also am the proud new mommy of a German Shepherd puppy. She's about 5 months old and her name is Rogue. And I just thought we'd get a little cuteness to get us started before we dive into the topics. Next slide. Perfect. So why are we here today? Why did you guys choose this time to spend with me? So what we're going to talk about is learning the foundational components of organizational culture through that change management lens and the foundations associated with that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the foundational components of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to also highlight the connection between the organizational culture and the user experience. Next slide. All right, the evolving world and change. Next slide. So I always like to start out with this particular quote: organizations don't change, it's the people that change. I really do believe that this quote reinforces the relationship between an organization and its people. In order to really understand organizational culture change and its intersection with online community and diversity, equity, and inclusion principles, you must first also understand the foundational pillar of an organization and of a community, which, as you know, are its people. As we move through the presentation, we will continue to examine the role of organizational culture change management, the role that the people play, and those are different types of stakeholder groups, whether it be your users or different individuals in your organization, and how that really shows up in online communities. The goal for us as community managers should be to design an equitable user experience for all of our users. From my perspective, this really does begin with the organizational culture. Next slide. Next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. All right, so what is change management? I always like to start with an operating definition for everything that I do. So according to ProSci, change management is defined as the discipline that guides how we prepare, equip, and support individuals to successfully adopt change in order to drive those organizational successes and outcomes that we're all responsible for. For community managers, I believe this directly applies to our deployment and maintenance of online communities, as well as making sure that we're serving our users. So I want you to think of your online community and programming in the context of your organizational culture and those organizational objectives. I'd like you guys to keep this in mind as we discuss some principles and examples of organizational culture change and how to navigate that. Slide, please. Perfect. So change equals disruption, and as we all know, enter COVID-19. Perhaps this is the most relevant example of change and its impact on the future of work I can share with you today. The pace of change related to this COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, is ever evolving, and almost overnight, organizations are looking for ways to maintain both that productivity and that connectedness with their employees and customers. This digital disruption requires organizations to take a more human-centered approach on integrating their community into this overall digital workplace structure and making sure that it is aligned with the organizational objectives. For those of us who manage online communities, this presents a unique opportunity to showcase the value of the online community and set the stage of how change management principles can either be applied or revisited. There is, however, another change disruption I'd like us to consider as we move through our conversation today, and it begins with two words: George Floyd. Now, speaking intersectionally as both a female professional of color and a digital change enthusiast, What happened to individuals like George Floyd is not a new experience for diverse communities. However, certain organizational responses may be. Almost overnight, organizations are prioritizing and revisiting or initiating conversations around DE&I. For the community manager, taking a holistic look and being the bridge between the organizational strategy and culture and bringing that life to digitally in the community is now an overarching experience. Again, I just want to reinforce the fact that we're in the midst of that global pandemic, but societal tensions can play a huge part in shifting the organizational culture, specifically as it relates to these DE&I principles to which I've already alluded to. These tensions from an organizational perspective either magnify the need to examine diversity, equity, and inclusion, or expose the need for it altogether. And as I stated, it's a tremendous opportunity for community managers to be on the forefront on leading that conversation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now I'd like to discuss the foundational aspects of change management to kick us off today. Perfect. So this slide is what I like to call the 4 P's of change management, which include pain, perceptions, people, and process. Each quadrant, I believe, represents a knowledge that community managers should keep in mind, whether working with an existing system, implementing a new system, or sunsetting a system altogether. And these principles can be applied to online community programming and getting your stakeholders, whether that again be internal or external, on board with online community. As it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we will discuss a bit more in depth when we get to the people quadrant later in the presentation. All right. Change equals pain. There are so many studies that look at the neuroscience of the brain and link it to how people perceive change. And as we know, being online community managers, humans are social creatures, and any sort of disruption or perceived differences can create a little bit of resistance. Whether you're implementing or changing an online community or just doing an audit in a change-resistant organizational culture, that can be pretty challenging, but doable by remembering that, again, humans were social creatures. As the voice of the online community, you as a community manager must take the necessary steps to influence and move your stakeholder groups through the change process while keeping that in mind. The fact that disruption can be a bit unpleasant. All right, perception shapes reality. I'm sure we have all heard that saying before. And take this photo, for example. A person's position is largely based on his or her perspective. And this actually is the same as it relates to online community management and the elements of organizational culture. As the community manager, it is important to be able to shift the perspective of the online community to those various stakeholder groups and your users in order to advance that value proposition of your community in a way and in a language that everybody can understand. This fundamentally starts by understanding your various stakeholders and your online community impacts, being able to discuss the benefits of the online community, as I said, in that language. Be sure to consider how your organization even perceives online community management. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? This knowledge helps online communities approach the right people. As we discussed earlier, organizations do not change. It's the people that do. As online community managers, it's important for us to have a clear understanding of the perception of our online community and, again, the people that it impacts. You're going to hear me say that a few more times throughout the presentation. It's the people in the organization that we're serving. Understanding the differing perspectives and minimizing those perceived painful disruptions that we talked about. Remember, change equals pain can alleviate the potential stresses of change and make people more receptive to your online community and try new online community programming, such as an Ask Me Anything, whether or not you're going to turn on new modules, such as a blogging feature. All of that is going to look different in each community, but the approach is fundamentally the same. From a stakeholder engagement perspective, for the online community manager to identify who is most critical to the success of the online community is imperative. We also want to make sure that as you're identifying those individuals, making sure that you're taking into account how is success measured in your organizational culture, and do those measures of success have that diversity, equity, and inclusive lens that we've talked about. I just wanted to provide some organizational stakeholder groups to consider. This can include your IT infrastructure, your marketing and your sales, your communications. Depending on your business community type, it could also include a human resources department and your executive leadership. Does your online community have an official sponsor, and what does that behavior look like in the online community? And of course, again, the intended users, again, either internal or external, depending on who you're talking to. On this slide, we show this change curve model from the Acuity Institute. Since online community is a cultural change initiative, it is useful for community managers to really think about where their community and stakeholders sit on this change curve. And I think that this is a wonderful way to bring the entire change management process full round while connecting the previous quadrants that we've already discussed. So let's take a look at it. If you can, I totally recommend structuring some sort of cross-functional team with your stakeholder identifications interests represented. That's going to be the best way to combat any sort of resistance. And really taking a look at, as a community manager, highlighting the WIFM in change management, or the what's in it for me, in this case them. What can the community do for other departments? What can the community do for your overall organization? And again, keeping that people-centered aspect in mind, what can the community do for the people? All right, now that we've wrapped up with the foundations of organizational change management, I'd like to transition into the basics of diversity, equity, and inclusion and how that relates to organizational culture and its people. Basic elements of organizational culture include the values, beliefs, and norms that are shared between people, in this case, employees or users, again, depending on your use case, and needs to be reinforced at the highest level of the organization through leadership, governance documents, and more importantly, that language aspect. Remember, we talked about how language really does inform perception. These basic elements will also show up in your online community and will follow your organization's strategic model. I want you guys to take a moment to think about your organization's values and beliefs as we move into the next slides, in the following slides. Specifically, does your organization value diversity, equity, and inclusion? I want to take a step back and say that again. Does your organization value diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's a big piece. And how is that showing up in the online community? More importantly, is it showing up in the online community, and should it be? I love this image because I think it clearly articulates how organizational culture is central to structure, processes, and people. For the purposes of our discussion today, I want us to think about our structure as our online communities and the people, again, as our users, meaning that our online ecosystem is a subset of a dominant organizational culture. As community managers, you know your users best. So taking a look at how are your users showing up in your community? Are your users diverse? Do you have any data to support that? Do they feel welcome? Do they feel heard? Is the community governance or moderation policies using language that perceives the perception that we are being inclusive and equitable? And additionally, what I find to be interesting based on additional conversations with individual is the functionality of your overall online community. Does the functionality contribute or hinder your users from participating? So let's talk about diversity. Diversity in organizational culture really does converge in an online community. Diversity can be defined as the collective elements and characteristics that compose a person's identity, or what I like to call that people perspective. That is a reoccurring theme in our discussion today. After all, as community managers, we wouldn't have much value without strengthening that digital human connection and really harnessing the power of the people. From my perspective, part of effective online community management is really knowing your users and using data-driven recommendations to reinforce the two-way value of the online community. Based on what we discussed earlier, part of change management is moving people through that change curve and remembering that change can be a bit unpleasant. I always recommend to start with an audit of your user data and more importantly, its sources. Now, what I mean by sources is obviously the system in which your online community is functioning on, but are there other business integration systems that the online community feeds into that may pull some of that demographic data? In order to really embody a DE&I lens, it starts with identifying who your people are and designing that effective community programming to serve them. All right. As it relates to online community, we're going to talk a little bit about equity. And I do really like to think that our online community systems are the great equalizer, so to speak. Of course, this is going to be dependent on your individual business case, including what type of community do you have? Is it an employee-only community? Can contractors get in it? Is it external? Is it internal? But as long as your users have a functioning username and password, there should be equitable access within your organization structure to enable them to work towards the value proposition of the community. Equity can also be modeled in your community governance model, as I stated earlier. Think to yourself, have we been providing equitable treatment of all of our users in the community itself? And can our users see that? All right. I think that this image best exemplifies the definition of inclusion. While diversity is having those multitude of perspectives, inclusion is really centered on how those different pieces come together to make that larger impact. In organizations, this can manifest itself in cross-collaborative teams, such as the ones that we as community managers need to create that thriving online community. As a community manager, you do need a multitude of perspectives to not only align your community to business objectives, but to ensure that you're meeting the needs of all of your users. This not only enriches your overall online community experience, but it can lead to an increase in user adoption and morale based on your organizational business case. So now it's time to connect all of the pieces. I've spoken a lot about organizational culture and its overall impact to people as the lifeblood of an organization and how it's really centered on online community. DEI is a great example of how organizational cultural values translate into an online community experience by keeping your users and stakeholders at the forefront of what you do. These stakeholders could be other departments utilizing your online community to improve their job functions, or your customers coming to an online community to seek answers, knowledge share, or collaborate. No matter the perspective, utilizing your community to really bring people together is really demonstrative of the convergence of the organizational digital culture and strategy. And with that, I'd love to be able to take any questions that our audience may have as I was presenting. Go ahead and I'm just going to do a few shout outs here as I see. I see Oscar. Hi from Chicago. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Canada. I see you in here. San Francisco.
I know, isn't it so exciting? We've got people from everywhere. If you have any questions for Ashleigh, please be sure to drop them in the Q&A. We have one, so let's get started with this from Alyssa. They ask, my organization has made a commitment to DEI initiatives, and we want to extend that to the community. We don't, however, have any data on our users that would help us understand if we're building an equitable community or not. Would you suggest a survey, or is this something we do just because it's the right thing, data or not?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I really do come from a place of data-driven recommendations. So 100% I recommend doing some sort of survey. In order to really get a sense of who you're serving, you have to really be able to define who those individuals are, right? So whether your community is predominantly male or female, what is the racial demographic of your community? Again, it'll all depend on what your specific business and use case is, but data is key to be able to doing online effective community management. And as I stated, really taking a look at what the community can also do for other departments. So is this an opportunity to partner with other individuals in your organization to really fill some of those data gaps? Because if you're predominantly, as an online community manager, if you're putting out content that isn't resonating with your community users, this is an excellent opportunity to do that pulse check to be like, hey, maybe we should tailor it more towards this demographic, or maybe we should tailor it to this particular subject expertise that our users are really looking for. So that's all going to depend on what your overall business use case is, but I always recommend getting a pulse check. I will be able to share a little bit of an information from my current 9-to-5. So as I stated, I work in a membership-based organization where I manage the diversity, equity, and inclusion groups. Now, with that particular organization, DEI has been embedded just as in the overarching organizational structure. So you join the organization, you get to choose a chapter, and then you can also choose either an additional technical community, or as it relates to the diverse and equitable communities, as well, the DE&I ones that I manage. So because I have a pretty good structural model of who those diverse users are just by evidence of the organizational structure, I still regularly do surveys to get a sense of, are we as an organization putting out content that you as members even care about, and then really being that bridge and tying it to other organizational initiatives and content. So is your organization, because it's February and it's Black History Month, is your organization putting out content for Black History Month? Do you have users who identify as Black or other? So you see kind of where I'm going with that. You have to get an understanding of who you're even serving. As it relates to, since we're on that, as it relates to content strategy, you know, March is Women's Awareness Month. Like, that's a great opportunity to plug in to be like, we should do either some community programming focused around women or put out content. Same thing for, there's Asian Awareness Month and LGBTQ Awareness Month later in the year. So it's really about having that informed data strategy to be like, who are our users and how are we serving them and providing content, while again making sure that it's not just a check the box exercise, that we're just doing it because we think it's the right thing to do or everybody is doing it. Authenticity as it relates to diversity and equity and inclusion is very, very important as well. So I just wanted to take a moment to highlight that.
Yeah, definitely. And during our tech check, we, you know, spoke about that. We spoke about creating content for the community that drives awareness to,
yes,
to like, you know, Black History Month, to the Asian American Pacific Islander History Month and all of that stuff. So that's great. I do have a kind of follow-up question just for myself personally.
Yeah.
Well, how would you recommend like Alyssa and other members who are watching go about like the survey? Is there like maybe like a step or like a process or something that they need to keep in mind while creating the actual survey, like a timeline or anything? And do they need to share that survey data with their community? Is that how it just include like transparency and inclusivity and just providing those answers out and like some sort of reporting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a great question. And again, I'm going to go towards that organizational collaboration. I do not recommend that you guys do a survey in a silo. And when I've done it for clients, I've done it a couple different ways. I've either kind of created a qualitative survey, or again, use this opportunity to put in other questions and expose maybe some of those data gaps that the organization would need to know. In my 9-to-5, I was lucky enough to be able to partner with marketing. They have a market researcher on staff to really structure the survey in a way that was going to get at the data that we wanted, including like, that could be a whole separate masterclass on how to effectively structure a survey, right? So it's really about getting a sense of what is most important to the organizational strategic objectives as well as the online community objectives. So I encourage everyone to partner with other partner with other individuals as your organization, because it's really about that cross collaboration. So definitely asking questions. Now, one of the things I want to be mindful and respectful of is when we talked about doing that data audit, what demographic information do you already have? Now, what I've seen in some organizations, when people sign up to be a member, that goes into what's your customers or individuals' journey through your digital, like your organization, what's their digital journey? What are those points of discussion and, you know, those points of meeting? So sometimes when you join an organization, they have demographic data already, like, you know, first name, last name, your profession, you know, what do you do, and self-identifiers. I would encourage you to not make self-identifiers such as race or gender mandatory, so that they cannot complete the survey unless they answer those questions, because you really want to provide, it's all in the messaging and the structure of the survey, right? Like, hey, our organization, you know, we're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and as such, we want to hear from you. So we're doing some sort of audit. So I would recommend partnering with either marketing or communications to really make sure that there's an agreement on what the purpose of the survey is, and how do you message and position the survey that's aligned with your organizational, language and tone. Because what you don't want to do is turn off a user to be like, well, I'm not going to fill out this survey because why do you need to know and what my gender is or what do I identify? I don't feel comfortable sharing that with you. But I think, again, it's all in that positioning on, we're really doing this together and we want everybody to be a part of that process and future focused journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. Like really, really
Sure.
helpful and great. I was like writing notes down as you're talking.
Oh, I was like, am I making an impact today? That's all I want to do is make an impact for everyone on the call. So if I've impacted at least one or two of you, then I can have a great day.
Yeah, let's continue. We've got a lot of great questions here. All right, so the next one is from Emily. And they ask, how do you manage community members who are engaging in bullying behavior because others are not at the same place as they are when it comes to understanding and valuing diversity and inclusion?
Whew. So what I would say to that is, again, it goes to your community governance model. What do those community guidelines say? So remember when we talked about how language informs perception? Excuse me. Really making sure that your community governance and guidelines explicitly state that we are an organization committed to respecting diverse attitudes, perspectives. I mean, there's a whole lot of different language that you can use, but making sure that that shows up in an organizational governing document in community. I would also take a look at, as we discussed about how your online community culture is reflective of your overarching organizational culture. If your organization has values that encompass diversity, equity, inclusion, if there is a statement on your website about in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of those should trickle down into the online community as well via those guidelines. I would also say, what is the escalation process too? So if someone is being bullied or they're flagging, it's all about your processes and systems at that point, right? So really being able to design the language and making sure that people acknowledge it. So again, it depends on how your community is structured. But when I've launched communities, for my 9-to-5 currently, what we've done is anytime a new user logged in, you have to acknowledge the community guidelines. You cannot even log in unless you do that, which outlines the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It outlines that you will adhere to our professional code of conduct. If you don't, gotta get nixed out. So really making sure that those organizational assets are in line and having the process for almost like a community playbook. How do you address that? And that's going to look different in each organization.
Mm-hmm. Quick follow-up to that from Nisha. They asked,
sure.
Do you have community guidelines templates that you can share or that you really like, or something that's, an easy resource that's available online for free?
So I can provide some resources at the end of this call that I'm sure Annie would be able to blast out potentially. What I do is I take a look a lot at the community roundtable. They have some templates and some just things for community managers in terms of the value of the community management and the strategy. I would also actually, depending on what system that you're using, if you have a point of contact for system maintenance, if you're using like a Personify or a Course or whatever community system that you're working with, they should have some training modules and some templates to be able to use as well. I would recommend that.
Perfect. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move right along. The next question from Pamela. Do you have examples of how to set up distributed leadership in online communities in order to give more leadership opportunities to diverse voices? Pamela works in the nonprofit education sector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. So that sounds like, from my experience thus far, that's going to be some sort of champions program, and then encouraging some people of diverse backgrounds to apply for it. So it's really about how are you positioning a moderation opportunity or a champions program as a micro volunteering opportunity to, one, get some count in and some buy-in and availability from the users themselves. And again, it's all about the organization, like, putting out that perception. And I got to tell you guys, being super honest with you, I have the personality, especially as an online community strategist. I just go around talking to people. So if you see somebody in the community that's like super active, that's of a diverse perspective, start a little spreadsheet, or, pull your community analytics, like start identifying those people that are showing up as leaders in the space, and then design some sort of volunteer opportunity to fulfill, again, that overarching and organizational need. And I know I keep saying that I'm a broken record. It really is about the people, but I also come from the perspective that you need to have the systems and the processes to be able to support the people in enabling whatever community culture that you're trying to build. So doing just some sort of user audit and seeing, who's showing up in the spaces, and reach out. I mean, I know everybody's community teams are different. I have clients to where they have a mighty community team of one. And then I've worked with clients that also have community teams of, 3 or 4. So really about getting on the same page on who are we trying to serve? How do we have a process and automation to bring those diverse voices to the table? Because I got to tell you, identifying the people is one aspect, but designing that organizational system or process in order to be able to develop them towards whatever strategic objective you're trying to get, it's 2 separate pieces. Because as we didn't talk about this could be a whole separate, a whole separate presentation, but what are those intrinsic and extrinsic motivations of your users? It cannot just be, hey, we need diverse voices in here. That seems a little self-serving as an organization, right? Like, you want people to want to lend their voice, which means that the organization has to put out a perception that we are inclusive and welcoming of diverse voices. So just to kind of bring that full circle, identifying the people, so who are the users that you're seeing, designing a process to be able to bring them into the fold. When I like I said, that's like a whole separate presentation I can do on like how to structure and manage like super user programs or champions programs, but tapping them on the shoulder and encouraging them also to share with their friends, because there's nothing that really grows community than that peer-to-peer recommendation. I mean, us as a community manager, we can only do so much. It really is, they should really be out there being the voice, being the champion, bringing in their network to help drive whatever business objectives that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I actually want to touch a little bit. I know you said it can be a whole nother section on the intrinsic versus extrinsic kind of, I don't know what, like, gifts.
Motivators?
Motivations.
Yeah.
Motivators. There we go. Thank you so much for that word. You saw me struggle, but motivators for, these diverse champions that you're looking to activate. We know what extrinsic looks like, but can you share a couple examples of some intrinsic motivators that you've seen or that you've been a part of in any of these initiatives that you've set forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say identifying what is important, again, to the user. Some people do things because they organically feel a sense of pride about having to impact an organizational KPI. That's the best way that I can do it. So what I have done when I've structured champion programs, I have done, it's highlighting that with them, right? The what's in it for me, what's in it for them. So I always take a look at when I am, structuring any sort of things, man, I got a puppy, man, I'm busy. Why am I doing anything extra? Like what's in it for me? Now, not everybody's like that, but as a community manager, you have to think you have different types of people and different types of pieces are going to resonate with them. So really taking a look at, oh, Anne, are you still there? You kind of froze. Still, I'm going to go ahead and keep talking in the faith that you guys are still with me. If you guys are still here, if you can just put a hey, we're still here with you. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Validate me as a human today. Thank you. So really taking a look at what is important to them, like what's in it for them. So I've actually done a few different things, and that again goes to the organizational structure and culture. What are your organizational's current methods for recognizing people? Is it like an employee or like a member spotlight? Is there like an internal newsletter that goes in? Do people, I've been with organizations that do like a drop for your bucket sort of thing. So making sure that you guys have an understanding of what your organizational methods are for recognizing people, and then being able to design a program that speaks to that. And I would also note, leverage your technology, right? So gamification and badging are like a huge things in different online communities. So what I have done, is I've created a champions program. I had a specific start and end, and I had some of those pieces on what would be most important to them. And some of that was badging. Some people just like to go to their profile and say, I'm an attendee here. I've gotten this amount of points. I have attended, or led this sort of workshop. So it's again about taking a look at your overall organizational structure and designing pieces for that. So until Anne joins us, oh, there she goes. Hey, girl. We're still here. So just to kind of catch you up, I said tie it to your organizational culture. Make sure you understand what your current organizational methods are for recognition, and leverage your system's functionality, whether that be badging, special groups, any sort of spotlights. That's how you really get a sense of what's most important to the individual, because some people just like to go to their profile and see a bunch of badges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And like certifications and whatnot, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move right along here. I think we can get through the rest of these questions. So
yeah, perfect.
Asked, hi Ashleigh, are your members from project management or another professional areas, and how do you engage them?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I want to just make sure I understand.
Mm-hmm. Are your members from project management? I think it was when you were actually asked, this might be the time question, when you were talking about your 9 to 5. So are your members from project management or another professional area, and how do you engage them? Juan, if you're still with us, if I'd asked that and explained that correctly.
Yeah, so in my 9 to 5, I manage an online community for safety professionals. And again, you guys hear me talk a lot about it's the structure and the value proposition. So part of the best thing, the best online communities in my perspective are when the community manager has to do very little. Right? Like that's kind of like the dream. They're in there answering each other's questions, posting questions. And again, that's going to go back to the value proposition of what your community is and the business use case for it. I am a huge structure process individual, because with something like online community, everybody needs to be on the same page on what is this community for, and craft language and training resources and toolkits, not only to educate your internal stakeholders like your partners, but the users themselves. So yes, I manage an online community with safety professionals where the value proposition is you become a member of the association and the online community is part of your exclusive member benefit. Now, I also have a client where she's a trade association for crafters and knitters, which is actually really cool. Same sort of model. You join that trade association, you get access to that exclusive internal community where you can ask questions, connect with others, and get professional resources.
Love it. Okay, so we have the final question from Oscar. It's kind of a two-parter, so I'm going to split this up, all right? So Oscar, his first question, you spoke about increasing exposure on how organizations value DE&I. Any suggestions or best practices on how orgs can clearly showcase efforts and successes?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a tough one. So one of the things that I just want to leave you guys with today is that diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's like a marathon, like it's a journey. Like it's not a sprint, right? So again, taking a look at how does your organization embody diversity, equitable, and inclusive principles currently? If they don't, how do you have that conversation with senior management? Because one of and accountability is a huge thing. It is not a check the box exercise, and I cannot explain that more holistically than that. Like, it really is about, we are now embodying diversity, equity, and inclusion for the long haul. So if it's about showcasing efforts, again, it's partnering with your marketing and communications plan, taking a look at, I'm just going to pick a random organization. Are the photos, if you have photos on your website, are the people diverse? Baseline, is that diverse? Do you have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do you have that as a value statement already? If you're going to create a roadmap or change plan, again, that could be a whole separate masterclass on how to do a cultural roadmap, but making sure that you're building in pieces to be able to celebrate those small, quick wins. Is it, and this is kind of what I always caution people against. If you're an organization and you're gonna create like a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force, make sure that they have a clear understanding of what they're supposed to be doing and the impacts and metrics associated with that. I see a lot of people doing a lot of different task force. I have some clients that are doing it, and I've helped structure that task force as it relates to your overall strategic plan. And one of the things that I will just say again, it's really hard to get buy-in if it can't be measured. So really crafting goals and KPIs in your organizational cultural language that distributes accountability amongst different levels and different departments is the best way that I can say that. But it really is, it's a long haul. It's not a sprint.
All right. Definitely. I mean, we hear you on that one for sure. We'll get into his second question. So Oscar's second question is, I also work for a membership-based organization, and we are focusing on increasing representation within our community. Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions on how to identify diverse audiences and what we should do as an organization to ensure value for this audience?
Yeah, it goes back to those data-driven recommendations. I mean, I cannot stress that enough, because I've often seen in organizations that there is a disconnect between what the organization thinks that the users and the people want as opposed to what they actually want. So having that sort of qualitative or quantitative data as at least a starting point is always like my recommendation, because if you as an organization says, hey, we're putting out valuable content, but if your users don't think that it's valuable content, then it's not valuable content, right? So it's bridging that disconnect between what the users actually want versus what you think they want or what you think they need. Organizations sometimes have a little bit of a tendency to be a little self-serving, and it's just about it depends on the type of organization that you're in. You know, there's organizational structures provide barriers to engagement all of the time, but it's really about understanding and advocating for the voice of your user, right? And as I've presented things to executive leadership before, it's the data. It's those qualitative pieces. It's the data, because if you just say, oh, well, I heard this informally, they're going to be like, well, what's the sample size? Like, coming with tangible metrics just reinforces your value as an online community manager and the voice of your users. And you guys, I know survey sounds like a scary word sometimes. It don't even have to be that long. You know, few identify, and if you have budget, oh, throw out Amazon gift card. They love it. Or, you know, whatever sort of, you know, tchotchke or swag, use it as an opportunity to push another product or service or bring awareness to another initiative that your organization might be doing. But it's really, I just don't know how people make strategic moves without any data to inform it. Because for me, I always come from that that questioning, like what does the data say? Because I need something tangible to be able to provide a quality and equitable user experience. Because like I said, it's what you think that they want, but that may not be what it wants. So then it's an exercise in futility.
I love it. Okay, everyone, you heard it here first. The next CMX Masterclass is Storytelling with Data with Ashleigh. We're going to figure that out. We'll find someone to do that, right? But yes, okay, we've come up on our time, but just to kind of like piggyback off on like what you just mentioned, that's what we're trying to do here right now. Like the community team at CMX, we're talking to our community, having 30-minute meetings with them. We want to know their pain points, what they're dealing with, how we can help. And that's what led to this. That's what led to being here and, you know, informing everyone on like, you know, what you know and what you're an expert in. And that,
thank you.
Starting point. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you for doing my slides. Like, once again, I appreciate the collaboration. And thank you guys here that have been, you know, hung out with me today. You could have been anywhere. You chose to be with me. I hope it was valuable. And, you know, with that, I'll turn it over to you, Anne, if there's any parting words.
Yeah, no, that's about it. We're going to sign off right now. Everyone have a great rest of your afternoon, your evening, wherever you may be, morning. And we will see you at the next CMX Masterclass.
Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.